and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
X backs it out. Nobody guarding closely. He's just going to let the clock start to run down. That's how they start to work the offense. He swings it to the right side, throws it out to Malik. Renew now. Drives in low. Throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead. Down the floor in a hurry. Here's a shot by Puff Johnson for three. Off the rim, no. Indiana wins. The Hoosiers do it again, and Anthony Leal will be the hero tonight.
I mean, I know with the shot clock running down and everything that, you know, we're going to get a chance to get a shot, but the odds of that shot going in aren't always high, but the odds of losing on a tip-in or a rebound is something that we talk about a lot on defense. You know, if there's a buzzer beater, we got to be boxing out. So I knew that if he did happen to miss a shot, to go in there and be able to try to make something happen was a possibility, and I'm blessed that I was able to do that.
Anthony Leal, who later went on to say, look, I'm playing a game I love for a school I love. What's not to love, basically. As the Hoosiers advanced in the Big Ten tournament, defeating last night Penn State.
Leal deals for everybody.
That's right. That's Mother Bears,
Party
right?
of Mother Bears, yep.
But it's going to be a while before Anthony Leal's able to cash in because the Hoosiers have to get right back at it. On this Friday, good afternoon to you. It's kind of St. Patrick's Day because traffic is jammed up downtown because I think the parade is today, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I was going to wear green today, but then I looked at the wake-up call with KB and Andy, and they didn't do it, and I knew you wouldn't do it, so I decided not to be the odd one out. And
why did you know I wouldn't do it?
Because you never participate in the holidays unless I beg you to. Halloween, I had to throw you a mask to get you to participate. I suppose that's the only one that I have of reference.
I was going to say.
But I just figured you wouldn't do it unless I texted you.
I don't dress up for Halloween because I'm not 12.
Ah, that's it. Okay.
But the St. Patrick's Day, again, I go back to.
It's also not St. Patrick's Day, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
To me, St. Patrick's Day is St. Patrick's Day, right?
Man, that 12 comment cut deep.
I'm just saying. Purdue is underway in the Big Ten tournament. We'll keep you abreast of that over the course of the show today.
You're still with me, right? Regardless of what happens with them, I know what they are going into the tournament.
Yes, they're a number one seed.
Yeah.
Now, here is what I think about Indiana. Two things. And by the way, good afternoon to you, like I said, on a Friday. Jake Query, that was Jimmy Cook, Eddie Garrison here as well on Query and Company. On this St. Patrick's Day, we're going to play, we will do this today. In honor of it being de facto St. Patrick's Day, we'll have like somewhat music that you feel like you would hear either like at a St. Patrick's Day parade or having something to do with just the, like if you were in Boston, et cetera, right? So we'll do that over the course of the day. I thought last night Khalil Ware was really good. And I think that for Indiana, stating the obvious here, but Khalil Ware is playing himself into showing why he was thought originally that he was going to be an NBA lottery pick type player. His footwork around the basket is really good. His energy level to get himself open. I know he kind of plays like a Jay Edwards in the fact that he looks like he's an aspirin from a coma, but I think he's pretty dialed in. And look, when he's going offensively, he's very difficult for teams to contend with. And I think in this Big Ten tournament, I really do think this in this Big Ten tournament, I am not a fan of the St. Louis Cardinals. And part of the reason why I'm not a fan of the St. Louis Cardinals, aside from their boorish fan base, it's like we're the smartest fans of all time. We just do things classier. We cheer bunts because we understand. You know, like Cardinal fans think that no other fan base knows the game of baseball. It's exhausting. I think at this point they relish in it. But I digress. Part of why I don't like the St. Louis Cardinals is because it's a great franchise that finds themselves the ability to be competitive more often than they're not. And there have been years where the Cardinals have even won the World Series where you were like, they weren't the best team all year long. I felt like into August and September, they weren't even going to make the postseason. And then they got hot like in mid to late September. And I kept looking at the standings with the St. Louis Cardinals going, just do not let them in. Do not let them in. You don't want them hanging around. And then they get in, and you realize why you should have gotten rid of them when you had the opportunity. I do feel like this Indiana basketball team in the Big Ten tournament, and maybe they lose tonight, and my point goes completely out the window, but it feels to me like if you are Nebraska, obviously who has to face them, if you are Illinois, if you are Purdue, if you are Michigan State, is Michigan State still in it?
Yes.
I get Michigan State and Minnesota confused. You don't want Indiana hanging around. I think they're the team that everybody else is like, do not let them hang around because they're kind of getting increasingly dangerous. Are they going to be an NCAA tournament team? It's probably too little too late. We've gone over that 100 times. And I think people know my theory on if they get to the Big Ten title game that all bets are off. But I'm telling you, I think they're just a little bit dangerous, Jimmy.
I mean, they're a hot team right now. I cannot argue that. They've won 5 straight. We could spend hours diving into the quality of opponent that they played over that win streak. Michigan State, probably the best win on that stretch, just because of them being firmly in the tournament. Wisconsin was kind of on a downward trajectory when this win streak started. Look, I've said my piece on Mike Woodson. But at my core, yes, I'm an IU fan. I went there. I want to see them do well. But I think there's a lot of people that still sit where I'm at, Jake. And maybe it's the doubting Thomas in me and looking at what they've been all year versus what they've been for 5 games. Tonight will change a lot of people's perspective if they pull this off. Because this is a legit win. I'm not saying Penn State wasn't. You had to gut that out. Penn State was a hungry team, new coach, all that good stuff. But this is a significant win because if you beat Nebraska, the 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament, who's having a fantastic year, who slaughtered IU the times they played this year, when you look at that matchup, you win that game, then you have belief back amongst the fan base. Because now all of a sudden, if your path is right, all you got to do is beat Illinois and you're in the dance, that's it? I still think they have to win it outright, just the way the bubble's shaping up, which I want to get into that with Indiana State in a second because I'm worried now about the Sycamores because that's just the curse of not winning your conference tournament. You have to be at the mercy of literally everything that happens. But in regards to IU, you win tonight against a significant Big Ten opponent, a tournament team in Nebraska. That flips the script, I think, with the entire fan base of sitting where you're at instead of where I'm at, which is, man, they might actually be able to do this thing. I still need to see it against high-level competition. Michigan State's the best one. They did that at home. Give credit to them. And look, give credit to Mike Woodson and the entire roster because it would be easy when everybody, myself included, buried them for them to lay down and end on a 4-game losing streak or a 5-game losing streak versus winning 5 in a row. It took guts. I'm proud of Indiana for what they've done. But with where the expectations are for me, it's very simple. Make the tournament every year. Before I'm back on that train, I need a significant win. Nebraska would be that. Unquestionably, Nebraska would be that.
So, Jimmy, what'd you do yesterday after the show?
Watched a lot of college basketball. By the way, we didn't talk about this yesterday because obviously we're not nerds, even though I am. I just hide it well. It was Pi Day, so I was going to go to Blaze Pizza. Mm-hmm. The one, for those that don't know, it's kind of like a Subway or Penn Station where they make everything right in front of you, right? I guess Subway is the better example. Anyway, $3.14, you can get yourself a pizza yearly. We usually do that because it's like, man, it's a great deal. It's usually like $12. The line was to Orange Theory, which is like a block away. So we did not do that. Instead, we went to Mellow Mushroom. Shout out to Mellow Mushroom in Carmel. Had some delicious pizza. It was my wife Haley and I. It was a great time. What about you? What did you do on Thursday?
I got to think of what I did. I know I had something that I did, and it was like expansive, and it took me right up until something else. I got a stretch. It was good.
Nice.
Yeah. Guy at my gym does a full stretch thing for like an hour long. It's fabulous. This is crazy. Like, I can't believe that I forgot.
You surely
what I had
watched.
yesterday.
I know you watched, obviously, IU and Penn State, were you locked in? Loyola broke my heart, but maybe helped Indiana State. They lost a tough one to St. Bonaventure last night. Were you locked in the conference tournaments, or are you more, Big Ten, and then once we get to the dance,
I know
ready?
what I did. As soon as I got off work, I had a couple of outlets call to interview me about the passing of Dan Wakefield.
Okay.
So I did, including one of them. I went to the Red Key, which was Dan's favorite establishment, and was interviewed by WTHR at the Red Key about Dan and his legacy in Indianapolis, and then did another with a print publication. And understandably so. I was like Matt Damon on the Late Show. I got bumped for weather, understandably, because there was some pretty severe stuff that came through Central Indiana. And so that story, I believe, never aired. You guys got all excited here all of a sudden. What happened?
In the NFL, Aaron Donald has announced he's retiring from football.
Okay. Is that a huge surprise?
Yeah. I mean, given
Think it is?
Isn't he still on a pretty big contract from what he signed a couple
Well,
years
but
ago?
if you
Am I wrong
remember
on
when
that?
there was talk when they won the Super Bowl, he was going to retire.
Sure. Then they brought out the Brinks truck, and he was like, okay, I guess I
mean,
can try to do this
one-man
a little
wrecking
longer.
crew, right?
Yes.
One-man wrecking crew.
One of the greatest of all time.
But at any point, certainly hoping the best for the areas of Indiana that were devastated yesterday by storms. That was obviously a big storyline. Yes, I did watch the second half, essentially, of the Indiana-Penn State game. By the time I got home and everything else, that game was, I thought Indiana was interesting. Indiana went to a zone, which you don't see a lot out of IU. Certainly, traditionally, you don't see a zone out of Indiana. And Penn State did do a nice job out of the corners of kind of breaking that zone, softening that down. But, Jimmy, I'm going to have to give Mike Woodson some credit here. And I give Mike Woodson credit in the fact or the area of he had said for a long time that Indiana's a different team with Xavier Johnson. That when they have Xavier Johnson, that they're just different, and that defensively they can be different. Now, I certainly think Xavier Johnson has been given way too much leniency with Indiana. But he is there, and so you talk about him as a member of that team, and there is legitimacy to the point of his injuries over the course of the year might have changed in the games that he was not there the way Indiana played. Now, there were games he did play, and he was terrible. But maybe he was hurt. I know yesterday, he had 4 points. 4 points. Okay, great. He was 2 of 5. He had 4 points. But I think defensively he helps them a bit. I can't, I can't help but continue to think, though, of, and I know that this sounds, and this is the dichotomy for Indiana fans. You have the excitement over the fact that they won last night. You have a little bit of a energy, and you wonder if you're not faking the energy, but you have an energy about the fact that now they might win 20 games, and if they get, your mind starts racing of possibilities and can theys and whatever else. And then you think about next year and you go, really? I mean, really? Mackenzie Mbako, he was 4 of 15, 0 for 5 from three-point range last night. But he is starting to show enough offensively that I think McKenzie, and this is the state of college basketball in 2024. This is not exclusive to Indiana. This is the case in most places. And I think it's what frustrates Indiana fans about Indiana. I think it's what frustrates Butler fans about Butler. I think it's what frustrates probably Louisville fans about Louisville. I'm not going to say it about Purdue, because I don't know that this is the case with this roster at Purdue. But at Indiana, for example, Mackenzie Mbako. Mackenzie Mbako, the thought from everybody is, right now, he is, I think, pretty safely a second-round pick in the draft. He obviously would like to be a first-rounder. If you look at Indiana for next year, you're like, well, if Mackenzie Mbako comes back, and then you have, Gabe Cupps back, and you have now Trey Galloway, and, if they've got to hit the portal, and there's good players in the portal, there's so many what-ifs. But as a fan, what you want and what you hope and what you assume is that Mackenzie Mbako or any other player on that roster wants to see Indiana continue a forward trajectory of the program as much as possible, that they want to be part of it. And the Mackenzie Mbako is like, I know the NBA is a possibility, but I am an Indiana Hoosier, and that's why I committed to Indiana, because I love this program and I love this school. I'm not saying he doesn't like it there, but do you think he has the same dyed-in-the-root love and passion for playing for the university and the privilege of it as Anthony Leal? Probably not. And so if you're a guy like Mackenzie Mbako, you look at it and you go, hey, I got a chance to get drafted, maybe do a two-way contract, but I'll be drafted by an NBA team, or come back and help, like, rebuild Indiana. Which are you doing? And I think the fan base is fatigued, not just at Indiana, but at every school in the NIL transfer portal era. Fan bases get fatigued because players don't have the same long-distance, long-committing dedication, Casey Kasem, that a fan feels they would if they played there. And so when you look at Mbako, you go, okay, I'm starting to see it now. I'm starting to see what, and gosh, what a player he can be for them in 2 or 3. Well, is he going to be there in 2 or 3 years? It's just a different era, and I can see Jimmy have that fatigue speed.
For what it's worth, and this is just off of 2 boards, this means nothing. There might be one where he is in there. Mackenzie Mbako is not featured in the first 2 rounds of just 2 mock drafts I just looked at. So it's not to say that, again, he's not out there somewhere. My bigger concern, Jake, to your point about the whole does he value it the same way, is if he transfers or not. Like that would be my bigger thing, if he sees a better opportunity somewhere else. But the reason that there was still optimism for IU next season, including when McNeely was a part of that, was what if Mbako stays? What if Renew stays? Yeah, you'll lose Ware to the draft in all likelihood. He's earned that. But that's a decent foundation. And maybe it still could be if it's just Renew and Mbako with McNeely now off the board. But regardless of what happens for this run for Indiana, and if they go on it, it doesn't, like, if Indiana makes the tournament, it doesn't invalidate what their problem was all year that they still have to address in the portal, which is better guard play. And Xavier Johnson's injury, though, validates Mike Woodson's complaints of, hey, we haven't had X for most of the year.
It does.
Like, that's validated now. But you still have to do something that worries me, and I think worries a lot of Indiana fans because of the struggles from a year ago, fair or not, of, okay, you're going to have to fill a lot of holes on this roster by doing it in the transfer portal. Are you capable of doing that? Is the NIL budget or the brand of Indiana still strong enough where you can have a home run type of full-scale, go from 6 in the Big Ten to top 3 in the Big Ten type of offseason, all done in the transfer portal? That's what it's going to come down to for them for next season. Obviously, we're focused on this year, and they still have everything in front of them if this run can continue tonight against Nebraska.
Yeah,
but guard play has to be fixed next year.
You're right.
Or upgraded, at least.
And I just think it's dangerous when you start going into, like, I guess it's no different than recruiting in general, but the transfer portal, I mean, you know, you might be relying on a guy that you're pretty sure is going to transfer, and then he decides he's not going to, or
Sure.
It's a topsy-turvy world, man. I wouldn't want to be in building and maintaining college basketball programs.
The one thing I believe that former coaches have said, this is always what I've thought, but now coaches that are retired have publicly said it. They got out because of how it's changed. It's a different animal. It just is. That's why you see, whether they want to admit it or not, that's why you see Saban go to the door or Coach K go, because, I mean, obviously Coach K was up there in age, but why else do you walk away when you have an empire built? Because the thing's changing. You've already established a legacy. You have plenty of money. You're good. It's a different beast now in college athletics. I don't envy Mike Woodson, Matt Painter, anybody that has to deal with this, because it's just a different animal of not just recruiting outside, recruiting inside and retaining your own talent, all while worried about if you have enough NIL funds to keep everybody happy.
Now, what do you do for St. Patrick's Day? Was that a big deal when you were in? I realize it's an Irish holiday, not a Catholic holiday, but
sure, yeah, there's Irish heritage to the cook. So yes, yeah,
right.
No, I green beer, have a Guinness.
Well,
yeah,
I'm
go
assuming
to
you didn't
Irish
have green
bar.
beer at Roncalli High School.
I didn't know how far back
you were
you were
a
going,
kid in the
Jake.
Catholic school systems. What was it a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, there'd be St. Patrick's Day decorations around there. Sure.
Did you get the day off of school?
No, not to that level. No.
You didn't partake in the parade?
Every now and again, Shout out to a friend of mine, Keegan McCarthy. He's still at Roncalli. Only time I was ever part of the parade, he was in St. Baldrick's because he had fought and defeated cancer in middle school. And St. Baldrick's is a big fundraiser where you shave your head, for those that don't know, and raise money for cancer research. And he was a part of the St. Patrick's Day parade. I got to go to him, with him. Our class did a couple of times, but in terms of like going out to the parade, no, it wasn't viewed as like a big holiday of, hey, day off of school, everybody get out there. Not that way.
Eddie, yourself, St. Patrick's Day, you do a lot?
Nothing.
Do you wear green?
Barely. Just so I don't get pinched.
Well done.
Who actually does the pinching?
I don't know.
Isn't it supposed to be leprechauns?
I think so.
You know, I do a fabulous leprechaun. Top of the day to you there.
I was wondering how long it would take you to get to that.
You know, I was going to bring you a green hat, but I don't have one size 9 7/8.
You know, I got to be honest. It's decent, but it sounds also like Robin the Genie has just hijacked a leprechaun and is trying to mesh the two together a little bit.
No. There's a very distinct difference.
Okay.
The leprechaun. It sounds kind of like the Lucky Charm fellow, right?
It feels like I'm right there back at a Saturday morning cartoon, Jake, and Lucky Charms has popped on the TV.
You know, when I go out in public, and people come to me, they come up to me, they do often, and people say to me, I've got to say, that radio program you do, I'm not a fan of the radio show, but the leprechaun, now that's a something. Can you talk to me like a leprechaun? And I always say this, thank you very much, matey. What might you do? I mean, why not, right? Eddie, anything you want to add?
No, sir.
I believe you guys were spared this year when Talk Like a Pirate
No, we
Day
were
fell on
not.
a
We
weekend.
were not.
I didn't go full bore.
Oh,
it felt pretty strong bore. I don't know.
No, you guys have not been full bore. No.
It absolutely was during a show, though, because you were utilizing it.
Trust me, you got Porky's on TNT. You did not get the full throttle.
Well, I texted Derek Schultz the day of and wished him a happy Talking a Pirate Day, and he was thrilled, as you would imagine.
Derek and I set the trend on that deal because when we first started doing a radio show together on a different station was the first year that I had really heard of Talk Like a Pirate Day, and we went all in. And then within 3 years, Greenies and Mike are dressed like pirates for their show, and I'm like, this is so stale. We should have copyrighted that, right?
Yeah, you should have gotten the trademarks in there and gotten it done.
Jake, your your leprechaun sounds like a cross between Crocodile Dundee and Popeye. There is a little Popeye in there.
Yeah, that's pure Popeye.
Pardon me there, matey. Did you tell me already that we need to get to a break?
There's olive oil.
That olive oil was a strange-looking gal in the movie. Did you say that we need to get to a break, Eddie?
Yeah, Brandon Gaudin's up next.
Do you know what I'm going to do in order to get him here? Wave the magic wand. He'll be right on the other side near the pot of gold.
See Absolute Comfort at the Flower and Patio Show booth.
By the way, so the question again becomes, and I've asked it 1,000 times, I don't know that we yet have a certain answer. We have done a beer, usually a beer, sometimes out in the back garden depending on the weather, sometimes inside. We have done a beer at Connors on St. Patrick's Day, Shannon and I, for probably, I'm going to say, 6 straight years. So do we do that tonight or do we do it Sunday?
I mean, it depends how.
I would like for the voting masses. Why don't we let the listeners can vote by texting me? This is also a nice roll call for me to find out if people are actually listening to the program.
Can I cast my vote as well?
Yes. You can text me at 317-523-9288. 317-523-9288. We go and we have a beer on St. Patrick's Day. And I know that St. Patrick's Day technically is Sunday.
If you're only doing one beer, do it on Sunday.
Parade is today. So people let me know which day, today or Sunday, is the one that we should enjoy. Now, Connors, long-standing bar of Butler University fans.
Go Dogs.
So I'm going to be working under the assumption that our next guest, who you will see and hear, calling games for the Big Ten Network, but obviously has had career steps involving Butler. Brandon Gaudin joins us on the program. Brandon, I'm going to assume that at some point in your career you have had a beer at Connors in Broad Ripple, correct?
Multiple.
Okay.
That would be an accurate statement.
So the question is, I will let you be the first vote here. You probably just heard it. Shannon and I, every year, St. Patrick's Day, we have a beer at Connors. Do we do that today, which is the day that the parade is taking place, or do we do it on Sunday, which is actually the 17th of March?
Well, you see, that's a trick question, and the answer is C, and that's both.
Yes. Yes. Well done, Brandon.
No, I'm telling you, it just has to be the one. But okay, so then let me ask you this. We do both, Brandon. Thank you. If we do both, the annual photo of our St. Patrick's Day beer is taken A, today, or B, Sunday.
How's the weather today?
Yeah, I think that is an outstanding question. Let me look since you asked. Outside right now, it's like kind of grayish, 50. It's supposed to be 60 degrees today. Looks like actually going to be clear. Sunday, clear and 50.
Sunday. If there's sun out, blue skies, you can weather the outside with a zip-up hoodie and jeans and take a nice photo. I go Sunday.
Okay.
Now, do you wear green when it falls on the weekend? Do you wear green on Sunday, or do you wear it throughout St. Patrick's Day weekend starting today?
You know, I got a good therapist that you guys should call. I think you're diving a little too deep into this.
We'll send that to me off air.
What about
this?
I
can definitely use that.
What about this? If St. Patrick's Day, Michigan State's playing, and you've got to do the game, do you wear green or do you want to show objectivity?
Supposed to go objectivity, never wear the team's colors.
Hey, let's begin with this. You are on the call tonight for Indiana and Nebraska, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mike Woodson has said, and when Indiana was struggling, Brandon, he made no bones about the fact that they are a different team with Xavier Johnson. Johnson has not played well in every game that he's played, for certain, but Indiana now does look dangerous in the Big Ten. How much of that is because of perhaps the defensive presence of Xavier Johnson?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You look at his offensive numbers since he's been back. 5 games, 21 assists, but 17 turnovers. And everybody that has followed Indiana basketball knows that with Xavier Johnson, sometimes you have to take the good with the bad. If he can limit those turnovers somewhat, just take it from over 3 a game to 1.5 to 2 a game, I think it helps Indiana tremendously. But Mike Woodson speaks about his leadership. Look, we're not in the locker room, so we have to take what these guys are saying. But these players that play with Xavier really like him. They think that he's a good locker room guy, that he's a good leader, and he does give them a spark, obviously with his speed and energy out there. But the team just does seem to have a little bit more juice when he's on the floor. I just hope that as they go into tonight's game, and if there are more games going forward, he can be just a little bit smarter with that decision-making, especially in key moments. He has a tendency to get inside with the basketball and then he kind of panics. Oh, no, where am I going to go with it? He'll get in the air, and he'll make a bad pass. If he could just make a few wiser decisions, it would really help Indiana, especially in the absence of Trey Galloway.
College basketball broadcaster Brandon Gaudin is our guest. Brandon, I've had a couple of people come up to me and ask me this question. I know you're not a bracketologist, so if you don't have the answer I want, you can just go off of the eye test instead. When I look at Michigan State and I look at Indiana, just record-wise, there doesn't appear to be a big difference there. Yes, IU has a bad loss or two, especially that unforgivable one to Penn State at home last month. But when I look at the two of them, I don't see a ton of difference, yet Michigan State is clearly in the field and IU's fighting for their lives. If you know the answer from a bracketologist standpoint, I'll take that one. If not, what about the eye test separates the Spartans from the Hoosiers?
Well, I will go not from the eye test, because the eye tests, I think they're pretty similar, and both honestly have just had average seasons. But if you go from the resume, Michigan State has better wins. Their wins over Baylor, who they beat by over 20 points, and then that win over Illinois really helps to separate them. Indiana does not have a top-tier win. They do have what you call a quad one win, but keep in mind with quad one wins, they're not all created equal. We put these wins into buckets, quad 1, 2, 3, 4, to make it easier to digest for the general public. But a quad one win, if you beat the net number 29 team at home, and then you beat the net number 31 team at home, those are different. That's a quad one and a quad two win. But in the eyes of the committee, those are essentially the same victory. So you have to keep that in mind. Indiana doesn't really have any top-tier wins, even though they do have a few quad one wins. And I think ultimately that's what hurts Indiana. Their net ranking being down near 90 right now, just to put that into perspective, you need to probably be around 50 to really start to push the conversation. And so I think if Indiana wins today, their net is obviously going to jump. Then if they would beat Illinois, it would jump again. But realistically, for Indiana to feel safe, they've got to win the Big Ten tournament.
Does wins over Illinois and Nebraska, as you kind of walk into my next question, though both those wins would qualify based on neutral sites as quad one wins? You made that differentiator, though, like that win over Baylor for Michigan State. That's a high-tier win, even though it's just a quad win like a win over Nebraska. Would wins over Nebraska and Illinois on neutral sites be dictated as top-tier wins?
Yeah, those are top-tier wins. Those would be their two best wins on their resume. But I still think that they would need to win the championship game. I think winning two more puts them in the conversation to where, when CBS fires up their selection show, Indiana, they're going to be talked about, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think that net is too far down. If their net was 75 right now and they get those two wins, then it would but being below 90, I still think that there's quite a bit of work to do for Indiana.
When I look at the Big Ten, and listen, Brandon, we know that Brandon Gaudin is our guest who's going to be on the call for Indiana and Nebraska on the Big Ten Network. We know that Purdue is sensational and clearly the most balanced team probably in the Big Ten. The guy that when he is rolling that I think is as good as anyone not named Zach Edey in the league in terms of on consecutive possessions, you can keep feeding until it slows down. And it's only been in the last month or so. But tell me if I'm wrong when I say that Khalil Ware may be right now the biggest kind of secret weapon within the Big Ten tournament.
Well, I absolutely think so. And I think, and I don't want to disrespect Indiana's guards, but if you put him with a top-tier guard, I think that he would have been even better all season long. I think that Indiana's lack of consistent guard play this year has put so much emphasis on their front court, but I think it's also hamstrung those guys a little bit from getting better looks. And he has just, speaking specifically about Ware, taken it upon himself here down the stretch to say, okay, I need to put this team on my back a little bit if we're going to make a run here. And I'm sure that Mike Woodson and the coaches have talked to him about, hey, we can't shoot it from deep. Our guards aren't giving us what we need. You've got to kind of be more of an alpha. And he has really stepped up. I mean, in this 5-game win streak, he's had games of 26, 27, and 28 points. And last night he had 18 and 14. And I thought he could have got more. I thought he got some good looks that he missed. I thought he very easily could have had 25 points and 15 or 16 rebounds. So, yeah, I mean, look, his talent's through the roof. He's not going to be there next year. He's going to be off to the NBA, and he has put his talents on display here, especially over the last few weeks.
Brandon Gaudin is our guest. Brandon, I'm going outside the Big Ten here, but I'm staying within the state. You talk about net, and that's something that the committee values, something that I've always thought is an important metric, but certainly not the only metric that matters to the selection committee. What do you make of Indiana State sitting helplessly, having not won the Missouri Valley? Drake gets that automatic ticket instead, and they're now teeter-tottering as the days go by, rooting for losses, but with a net rank inside the top 30, something that I don't know if it's ever happened to a team inside top 32 in net since they've made that a point of emphasis, has missed the field. What do you make of them, and if you had to make a decision, do you think they get in?
First of all, you're right. A top 30 net team has never missed. So that would be the first. Now, right now, I believe they're either 27th or 28th. They could fall depending on what happens here the next couple of days with teams above them. But I do think that it's going to be tough for them to get in because they only have that one quad one win. But what sometimes gets overlooked also are the bad losses. And they have a really bad loss. They have a quad 4 loss, and those can really tank your resume come Selection Sunday. I selfishly, like you guys, being from the state, loving Darlings in the NCAA tournament, I hope that they get in. I think it would be cool. I grew up in Evansville watching Missouri Valley Conference basketball on a nightly basis, and I love that league. So I hope that they get in. I think if they do, they're probably going to have to go to Dayton because I think they're going to have to sneak in. And I know Indiana State would say, well, we don't care. We just want to get in. But everyone wants to avoid Dayton because if you go to Dayton and lose, it's like you were never really in the NCAA tournament. But regardless of whether it's Dayton or somewhere else, I think it's going to be right there on the cutting line. And I'm not just saying that to avoid the question. I think it's just so close. The committee's going to have a tough call here. I hope the Sycamores get in.
Brandon, we've come up with an idea on this show because that's what we do is we come up with ideas on the show. They never go anywhere, but we come up with great ideas on this show, okay? And we came up with an idea on this show called The Worst Four, which is kind of like Dayton, but we got to give incentives to Detroit and Coppin State and, the teams that have had the four worst teams in college basketball this year. We're going to send them to Kalamazoo. They got a new arena there. They're like Commerce. We've talked to folks there. They're excited about it. We're going to put on the game. Easily 18, 20, 25 fans are going to show up. We need broadcasters. Are you in? Can we chalk you in?
As long as it's on the Ocho, you can sign me up. Just send me the contract. I'll sign it right away.
That's right. Here's the thing. We got to bump one of those. We got to bump one of those shows from Tokyo of the folks trying to go down the icy stairs in order to put you on. But if you're cool with that, we're in, right?
Yeah, man, and please don't snub VMI out of the SoCon. They're 1-28 season. Their body of work is really solid. So I just would like to. I'd like to have a ploy for them to get in if you
see.
Don't
That's
mind.
Already it's working because what are we doing? We're debating whether or not somebody should be in, right? Their Ken Palm was terrible. It was worse. Hey, Brandon, I want to get back, obviously, to the Big Ten tournament real quick. Let's talk about Nebraska, who Indiana's going to see. Listen, they've got some guards that can give you fits. They've got guards that can score in bunches, but they are a little bit different away from Lincoln. What does Indiana need to worry about this evening?
Yeah, first of all, you're right. They do have a great resume, but their resume-building wins have been at home. They were undefeated in conference play at home, and they struggled on the road. Guard play is going to be interesting. I mean, they've got to defend Keisei Tominaga, and everybody says that, but he's the sharpshooter. He's the guy that they call the Japanese Steph Curry. He can fill it up, and when he gets hot, watch out, because he can pull up from just across the stripe like Caitlin Clark and knock it down from anywhere. So I think defending Tominaga is going to be big. But, you mentioned Ware. I think it's no secret that IU has to play through the post. And I think Indiana is best through the post when they get the two-man game kind of high-low going, when they can get Malik Renew and Ware passing well together from the elbow down to the block and working off each other. And then if you can just occasionally get a three from Mbako or from Cups or for Johnson and just spread the floor a little bit to give those guys some space, I think it makes Indiana dangerous. If they can do those things and defend the three-point line, play through the post with a high-low game, I think they've got a good shot. I think this should be a really good game. Nebraska's in the tournament, so they are kind of playing with house money a little bit. They're just playing for seeding. But for Indiana to take them down, I think they've got to do those things tonight.
Brandon Gaudin is our guest. You'll hear him tonight on the Big Ten Network. Brandon, not non-Purdue Indiana division. Let's just take Indiana off the table, and let's take Purdue off the table since they are the top dog. And maybe it's Nebraska. I don't know. But who is the team in the Big Ten that is going to get into the big dance, most poised to make a run to the second weekend or beyond, that isn't getting the love they deserve?
Well, that last part kind of changed the question, because I think Illinois is getting the love they deserve, and certainly I think they're most built outside of Purdue to make a run in the tournament. But I would say it's probably Nebraska if you're going for a team that's off the radar. I mean, because Nebraska's never even won an NCAA tournament game. They're the only power conference team that has never won a game. They're 0-7 all time. They just haven't been there. They haven't been there certainly under Fred Hoiberg's watch, his 5 seasons. But because of any team that can shoot from deep and has a player like Tominaga that can hit 3 or 4 threes in a row, I just always feel that's a good recipe for success in the NCAA tournament. They've got enough inside that you've got to honor. You know, they don't have great low post scores, but they've got enough post players and post defense that if they can hit some threes in the NCAA tournament on a short turnaround, I think they're a tough team to prep for. And the pace that they play with can also be challenging for teams. So, look, dark horse, I'm not going to say Nebraska's going to the second weekend because, honestly, it's going to be tough for them to get there with some of their limitations. But I do think of the teams in the Big Ten this year with the league being down a little bit, if you are looking for a dark horse, I'd look at Fred Hoiberg's club.
By the way, I look at dorks all day. Believe you me. I mean, you're speaking my language now, right?
By the way, Brandon, we had on Charles Davis at the NFL Combine. He informed us that there might be multiple announcers to choose from. Even though you make fun of me for taking it out of the end zone every time and I don't get past the 20, I'll still choose you. Don't worry. We told Charles the same thing. So.
Yeah, I just play it on mute. That's what I tell everybody.
Hey, Brandon, the most important question of all, somebody just texted me and said, before you let him go, we've got to know who the Braves opening day starter is going to be.
I would go Max Fried. It's either Fried or Strider. I'm guessing that was Zach Osterman that texted you that, by the way. Was it Zach?
I don't think it was Zach, actually. It was not. It was not Zach. Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, he's the Indiana beat writer. He's always my Braves go-to guy. He's a big Braves fan. But, yeah, it'll be Strider or Fried. Good news is either way, the Braves should be in good shape. So.
Well, the countdown's on for that, Brandon. Looking forward to continuing to follow along and enjoy the baseball season.
Shane wanted to know that, so we will let Shane know, Brandon, that you gave the expert Braves opinion.
All right. Shout out to Shane. Guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Indiana, Nebraska tonight on the Big Ten Network. Brandon Gaudin joining us. Good stuff. By the way, somebody else referenced, do you remember it was during the COVID year when he did his own One Shining Moment?
Yeah. I thought about asking him about that, but I feel like that's a 5-year anniversary question, not a 4-year.
So I sent a tweet of, as I mentioned, just the One Shining Moment, the very first year, 1987.
Sure.
Literally, my tweet said, the first year of One Shining Moment, 1987. That was the tweet. This guy replies and says, now you tell me. I was like, I don't know how else to take this. He replies to me and says, come on. This is lyrically one of the worst songs of all time. It's nothing but a bunch of sports cliches. Come on, man. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that I was, like, opining on how good it was. I just simply literally was like, here is an apple.
I took your post as a Grammy nomination for the song, so that's why I think that guy's so upset. Like
I literally was like, yeah, I just literally pointed out, like, here is a video. That's it. That's what I did, right? Sorry for offending people.
You ruined a guy's day by posting One Shining Moment. That's a first. Gotta be.
I don't know if we're up against the clock, but Eddie looks like a helicopter.
Hey, it's JMV, and this is your last chance for the
Okay, so here's what we're going to do in just a couple minutes. Jimmy, are you ready?
I am always ready, Jake.
I would like for you to pull up the college basketball scoreboard, okay? And I will pull up the latest bracketology. Again, barometer, not necessarily Bible. I get it. And we will do so to assess for Indiana State, for example, and other teams that are sitting there riding that bubble, how many teams with needles are walking around trying their hardest to make that needle, that bubble pop. We will do that. And then if you're just joining us, Aaron Donald, that's the big news story of the day. Aaron Donald, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, is retiring from the National Football League at the age of just 32 years old. But a fabulous, fabulous player, no question about it. But deciding that enough is enough in terms of a playing career and probably enjoying a lot of money living in Los Angeles, as we once called it. Maybe he'll go back to Pitt. Who knows? We'll come back. We will take a look at that bracketology next.
The Ride with JMV.
Okay, so as we are closer and closer, as a matter of fact, final show before Selection Sunday for the NCAA tournament. Best time of year, no question about it. But my buddy Matt Jacklin and I used to have every year, we would simply send a text all the way up to, so obviously in recent years, but it's been harder and harder to come by. We would text each other and or call each other pre-text years with simply the prediction of Indiana will be a blank seed and they will play blank. Now this year, Indiana's got to basically play their way in, and they are way on the outside looking in. But Indiana State, the team with which we now shift our focus, and Joe Lunardi's bracketology, and I get it. I realize that these are mock things, which usually are made to be mocked. But if you go by precedent, Joe Lunardi usually is somewhere around 65 or 66 of the 68 teams he has correct. He usually is pretty dialed in. So I think it gives a very good barometer as to what teams would be in. This is not gospel. This is conjecture, but I think it's pretty close. Right now, the last 4 teams that he has getting into the NCAA tournament, these are not byes. These are teams that would face one another about 100 miles directly to our east in Dayton. Those last 4 would be the team that eliminated Indiana en route to the 1989 runner-up. That would be Eddie Garrison, the Pirates of Seton Hall. Second in the last 4 in, the team that eliminated Indiana and blew them off the floor in, I think, 96, 97, somewhere in there, with Chauncey Billups going off. That would be Eddie Garrison.
Is that New Mexico?
The Buffaloes of Colorado. Next, the team that eliminated Indiana in the 1984 regional finals, 50-48, despite the fact that Ralph Sampson had left the previous year and Rick Carlisle was on the floor when they did so. That would be Eddie Garrison.
Virginia.
Correct.
Eddie, if you haven't started doing this already, if you just go to Lenardi's on the bubble, Jake's going in order to give you a little cheat sheet there.
I don't want to cheat, Jimmy. I'm not like you.
All right. Well,
Or the last,
to get a leg up.
The team whose football helmet has an acronym on it, which apparently is something that its players most commonly used during the Johnny Manziel era. That school is?
Now that's New Mexico, right?
No. Johnny Manziel
All
played
right.
for Texas A&M.
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Which, of course, has an ATM on the side of the helmet, which is apparently what their boosters were during the Johnny Manziel era. So those are the last 4 that are in.
That's good. Was that off the top, or did you have that during the Manziel era in your joke pocket?
Jimmy, come on, man.
Okay.
It's a nonstop machine here.
Yeah.
The first
like an ATM.
4 out. That's right. The first 4 out. He has New Mexico and then the Sycamores of Indiana State. So now Indiana State, and this is what we were talking about that could happen for Indiana State, is that there could be movement around them, because when the conference tournaments began in earnest, Indiana State was in. But we knew that gave teams an opportunity to pick up wins and move past Indiana State.
For a live update real quick, 'cause this happened last night, Jake. I tweeted this out. Lunardi had highlighted the bubble could shrink or expand depending on how things played out. That happens every year. Indiana State moved up from the last 4 in to the second to last team into the dance at like 5 o'clock last night, after Texas A&M had won and after Loyola had lost in the A-10 tournament. But then, and I know we're going to get into this in depth in a second, then Seton Hall and St. John's happened. Seton Hall loses that game, and the bubble shrinks, and Indiana State goes from being the second to last team in on Lunardi's on the bubble to the second team in the first 4 out.
Okay, so
they're out of the field
of
right
the
now.
teams right now that are standing in line in front of Indiana State waiting to get into the club. Let's go over where they are in terms of who has games left or who is done and their work is complete. Seton Hall.
They are done. They were ousted by St. John's 91-72 yesterday in the Big East tournament.
So one would assume that if Seton Hall is currently in and their work is complete, that there is no way they can slide past Indiana State, because both Indiana State and Seton Hall, their work is complete. Their body of work is complete, and that would assume that Seton Hall's body of work is seen as superior to Indiana State.
Correct. There's still a team or two that could bump Seton Hall, but Indiana State cannot be the ones to do that. Yes.
Correct. What I'm saying is, in this scenario, Seton Hall's body of work is clearly seen. If this was gospel, which it is not, but to give barometer, Seton Hall's body of work at completion is seen as superior to Indiana State's.
Yes.
Next, Colorado.
Colorado was victorious over Utah 72-58 last night. They still have Pac-12 tournament games to play. They'll play Washington State, the 2 seed in that tournament, at 10:30 this evening.
Okay, so one would assume Colorado, as it stands now, has superior resume, but if they get blown out, for example, maybe that tumbles them back enough where they'd have to fall 5 slots, just to say, for the sake of argument. Virginia in overtime, able to outlast 11 seed Boston College, a game that by many was expected to be a cakewalk for them. They end up winning in overtime 66-60. They will now play red-hot 10-seeded NC State at 9:30 this evening. NC State just upset Duke last night. But NC State is a team that's nowhere in the realm of being
Correct.
in.
They're
so
like Indiana in a lot of circles. They have to win it all.
If NC State were to beat Virginia, then perhaps that is enough of a blow that Virginia slides back behind Indiana State. That remains to be seen.
Could be. Yep.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M was victorious last night by 9 over Ole Miss, 80-71 in the SEC tournament. Whether or not you think their spot's solidified or not, it would be solidified with a win tonight against 2-seeded Kentucky at 7 o'clock.
Okay, now, those are the teams that right now are in, and it's a matter of whether or not they step on a banana peel. What about New Mexico, who right now of the group that is standing outside the club, the only standing in front of Indiana State is New Mexico? Does somebody punch New Mexico hard enough that they backpedal behind Indiana State, or is their work complete?
New Mexico just beat Boise State, the 3 seed out in the Mountain West last night, by 10. That put them where they are at. However, they have a matchup with the 7 seed, the Colorado State Rams, tonight in the Mountain West tournament. That's a 7 seed versus 6 seed. I suppose if you had a tough enough loss there, that could jettison New Mexico, to your point, Jake, further back.
Correct. So that would put say, New Mexico back behind Indiana State. Indiana State then moves up to being the next available into the party. They want to make sure that they stay in front of the last 2 teams we'll discuss, Pittsburgh and Providence.
Pittsburgh victorious over Wake Forest yesterday, 81-69. They would, in my mind, based on Lenardi's, the way he does things, punch a ticket to the dance with a win over UNC, the top seed in the ACC tournament, tonight at 7 o'clock.
Okay, and then lastly, Providence.
For Providence, they were victorious over 2-seeded Creighton, 78-73 in the Big East tournament yesterday, and they would have a strong argument to get into the dance with a win over 3-seeded Marquette tonight at 8 o'clock.
So what we're getting at is this. If you are an Indiana State fan, or you're just simply a fan of teams from the state of Indiana and you're wanting as many in as possible, you are rooting really hard tonight, believe it or not, for Kentucky, Colorado State, North Carolina State, North Carolina, and Marquette. You want all of those teams to win tonight to help out Indiana State. I love it, man. I love the bracket. I love all of it. I think it's fun.
I do too. That's why I watch so much of Conference Championship Week this week. Eddie was the one that found this, so I will give credit where credit is due. There's a Twitter account called Projection Sports, and Eddie retweeted this yesterday. This is why I love Championship Week. Yesterday, based on amount of games you could watch, was the 3rd best day of college hoops the entire season. Jake, are you sitting down? Okay, you are sitting down. Okay.
I am.
52 games over 14 hours. That's beautiful. 52 games over 14 hours. Conference Championship Week is awesome. Yes, March Madness is the superior thing, but this is quite an appetizer to get you started for next week with the first 4, the working worst 4 that we're trying to get out there, and, of course, the NCAA tournament.
By the way, Eddie, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder? Every year, as is tradition, I text Randy Bennett, the head basketball coach at St. Mary's out in California. It was very awkward when they played Indiana in the tournament, although we had him on and he was great. But I text him every year before or immediately following the Big West Championships. Was it last night or 2 nights ago that St. Mary's defeated Gonzaga?
2 nights ago.
2 nights ago. So St. Mary's your conference champions. So I texted him. I don't know him well. For those that are unfamiliar, I think most know by now. When years ago, when Derek and I think it might have been the Final Four. Which shirt is that? Indianapolis.
This
Final
Indianapolis,
Four?
but San Antonio was the.
I think it was San Antonio.
One you talked about yesterday.
The year. Well, Derek and I did the show from the Final Four. We went to Atlanta, we went to San Antonio. We went to a couple of them, but I think it was the San Antonio year. And St. Mary's had like a 30-3 season. They were one of the when it really got hot, the discussion about like, do you want a 30-win team from a small conference or like an 18-win Arizona State, that kind of thing. And St. Mary's had been eliminated that year. They were, I think, 30-3, and they didn't get in. And so they had Randy Bennett on Radio Row, so he comes over, and I know I've told this story several times, but they said, do you want to talk to Coach Bennett from St. Mary's? And it's like, they won 30 games and didn't get in. I don't know what else there is to talk about as an Indianapolis radio station. And he said, oh, yeah, my dad coached in Anderson, and my mom still lives in Southport. I'm like, okay, well, then, yeah, we will have you on. And he was just a super fun guy. So we get done, and I said, where exactly is St. Mary's? He said, oh, it's in the Bay Area, California. And I said, really? Well, I do play-by-play for IndyCar, and we're actually in the Bay Area in like 3 months. He goes, oh, come by. I'll show you the campus. So we did. Nick Yobin and I went there. The campus is literally the size of like Park Tudor School, okay? And it's beautiful. The area is beautiful. It's in the Bay Area. It is just a little bit south of and to the land side, so to the west of San Francisco. But it's a gorgeous area. So he comes over and shows us around, just a super cool guy. That's really the extent of my like friendship with him, except for we text like twice a year about basketball. So when I texted him, he just texted back. He's a little delayed on the reply time, but his reply back, thanks. By the way, absolutely huge win for the Hoosiers. So maybe Penn State is better than we think in the coaching circles. Maybe they you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, I Coach Bennett's been on the airways before. For St. Mary's to be back in the dance firmly and to win, the WCC title, head in there with momentum, I'm always going to get behind that. But yeah, if anytime you're able to get in circles, respect for a win, that's good. I still stand by, though, a lot more people, myself included, are back on the train if they get a signature win, and that would be tonight against Nebraska. No doubt about that.
Isn't it weird to think that a signature win would be against Nebraska?
Yes, it's a wild thing to say still. Welcome to 2024.
And I thought Nebraska, when Tim Miles was there, I thought he did a good job there, and I thought he was a good coach. And I remember when they got into the tournament, man, they were like, matter of fact, did they get in the I can't remember. Did Nebraska and Tim Miles, I remember them coming here for the Big Ten tournament, and they had a really good season, and I think they got beat early in the Big Ten tournament, and that might have bounced them out, actually, and they should have gotten in. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But I just thought he was a good coach. And, Hoiberg, Jimmy, the reality is Fred Hoiberg, the co-conference coach of the year along with Matt Painter, is probably proof or testament, is it not, to patience with coaches. Because if you think about it, like in the first year or two there in Nebraska, like it did not go well right out of the box, right?
Sure. And actually, it's weird, Jake. Both of those, Painter and Hoiberg, are case studies for struggles that happen within a program. Painter's happened a little bit further along than Hoiberg's did, but there were legit talks. I remember my sophomore year or junior year of college, back-to-back seasons of missing the tournament for Purdue. And there were legit conversations about, do they need to move on? Is it time for something new? And they didn't. They stayed the course. They stuck with their guy. And, look what it's produced for Purdue. Not only have they continued to be a perennial program in college basketball, dominant kings of the Big Ten for certain, but we talked about the awards of tying Knight now for Coach of the Year, most in the Big Ten, second most in the Big Ten, right behind Gene Katie. Sometimes there are blips. Maybe that's all this winds up being for Indiana, but there are still real concerns for next season. There are still flaws in this current team, but yeah, enjoy the ride. Maybe they go on a run. By the way, I don't know. I've yet to look up who the coach was in the 2013-2014 season for Nebraska basketball as I try to pull that up real quick. Great radio here. Tim Miles' second season was the last time that Nebraska made the tournament back in 2013-2014. They lost to Baylor, 74-60.
They have one of the longest losing streaks in NCAA tournament right now. They've lost 7 straight.
0-7? Yeah.
Well, didn't you talk about Nebraska?
Yeah.
Didn't Brandon just say that they're the only Power 5 that's not won an NCAA tournament game?
I guess that would fit the streak, right? Of 0-7. Yeah, he did.
Eddie, what do we have upcoming for your Indiana Pacers?
They're off today, second straight day off, and they're back in action tomorrow. One of the 2 teams left they haven't played, in the Brooklyn Nets.
Excuse me, Eddie. We're gonna do this again, and we're gonna do it in the way in which I've determined on the show that we are going to reference the Nets from yesterday, from my long soliloquy about this. We're going to see if Mr. Garrison was paying attention in class yesterday.
Well, I know I wasn't, so go ahead, Eddie.
They are playing who again?
They're playing the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay,
that's your thing.
No. It's show wide.
No.
Do you know that of which I'm talking about?
Is there a Sega Baba I don't know about?
No, there's a pronunciation that we're supposed to be doing with Brooklyn, but I'm not doing it.
Do you guys listen when I talk on the show?
I do.
It depends.
I know what you're talking about because I said Brooklyn.
That's not bad. No, Brooklyn.
Do
you remember the story yesterday, Jimmy? Were you asleep during that segment?
I was asleep during that. I won't lie to you. Jake, I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a liar.
I guess. In terms of Indiana, I guess, for the Pacers themselves.
Also, it wasn't in the show notes, so if we want like a sweeping declaration, it should
we
be
need
in
to
the
have a
show
meeting
notes.
about the show notes, too. I looked it up yesterday, and it said that, like, when I pulled up the show notes, and it said that Kurt Signetti's coming on. And I'm like, well, this seems to be a copy and paste from the past. But for the Pacers themselves, having a couple of days off, probably not bad, because I do think, and maybe we didn't talk enough about it, that game against Chicago, as much as I loved what DeMar DeRozan was able to do, they quite frankly were, I think part of that is just simple fatigue. And the guy next to me was all bent out of shape about, these guys are pros. And I get it. But even, I'm not saying they weren't playing hard, but I just think that you could tell that their legs were starting to go away from them in the fourth quarter of that game. They probably need some time off, to be honest.
The casual fan can complain all they want about, they're pros, they should be used to it. Well, look, clearly the league doesn't believe that because they've downsized on the amount of back-to-backs that exist in the regular season. Like, that's been a major point of emphasis the last 5 or 6 years, is limiting how many of these games they are to keep everybody fresher. Because even if you are superhuman and one of the most athletic, athletic people on the planet, your body's not used to routine changes. A lot of things are muscle memory, whether you're the average player or average guy or whether you're Tyrese Halliburton. If you change a routine, it is reasonable to think at some point in time over the course of a basketball game, fatigue is going to set in. And it's the reason that it's an anomaly for the Pacers. They're 2-10 on the second night of a back-to-back for whatever reason. And Eddie, you, myself, we've taken a dive into coaching mistakes or errors or rotation issues. And I'm not saying those don't matter, but fatigue matters just as much. So, yeah, get them a little bit of rest. There's only, one more second night of a back-to-back when they're in L.A., correct?
Correct. They play
Lakers-Clippers.
The Lakers first, and then they play the Clippers on the second night of the back-to-back.
And it's not something, Jake, that you would experience in the postseason. That's not how games work in the NBA. It's not like baseball where you have consecutive games. You have a day off in between. So the idea that you can fully judge them and not acknowledge, fatigue might be a factor is ignorant. Like it matters, especially being down a key contributor like they are in Benedict Mathurin. That said, can't come out flat now next time out against Brooklyn.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Welcome.
Thank you. See, Eddie, Jimmy, a willing participant of show camaraderie.
Sorry, I'm not into it. Wait, what's he into?
Now, is that all it takes? Is just, no, I'm not into it. Is that it? That's good enough for the company?
So, Eddie, just out of curiosity, what do you think it'll be like working with Andy at 7?
I won't have to deal with you harassing me for eating a sandwich or wearing a hat. I don't have to smell the fumes of Andy's cologne daily.
My cologne's wonderful, by the way.
Last Friday, I got a headache. Not going to lie.
I didn't have cologne on last Friday.
Yeah, you did.
I did not.
You did.
I will tell you that I did not.
I know you did because I could smell it.
Well, it might have been Jimmy's. It wasn't mine.
Oh, I know Jimmy doesn't want cologne.
Not a cologne guy, no.
I can tell you because I was good at getting on a plane, so I would not have had it on. Went straight from here to the flight, right?
So what you're doing now, Eddie,
Nonetheless.
is you're just naturally complimenting Jake's scent is what's happening. There's no involvement there.
I didn't compliment him. I
It's
just
all
said I
Jake,
literally got
baby.
a headache from his scent on Friday.
All right, fair enough. The one thing that I'm curious about with Pacers as well is, we're going to see with Bennett Mathurin. We got a glimpse of it, but now we're going to see it even more so, and that is the play of Ben Shepherd and Jarris Walker. I think Shepherd, we got a pretty good idea,
Do you think
right?
Walker? Do you think that's a turning point game, or do you think that's just a blip on the
I
anomaly
think we're
radar?
on the same page on that because that's what you're wondering, right? Like that's what we're going to find out. He got significant minutes against Chicago, but does he stay in rotation with that? I guess the best thing for in any sport, rookies are a lot like linemen in the NFL.
Yeah.
The less you think about the fact and hear about the fact they're out there, the better they probably are playing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first game where he was just kind of in the flow of things.
I mean,
right?
look at how far we were. You used the phrase "deer in headlights," and you were exactly right. Opening night when he got those minutes to confidently being a valuable contributor against a division foe, albeit in a loss a couple nights ago. He's had tremendous growth, and I don't want to give too much credit there, but a lot of Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd are local test subjects. We've seen it nationally, but are local test subjects for the value that you have with why the NBA is continuing to promote the minor league system that is the G League, because there's still valuable experience and growth opportunities that they've clearly gotten from the Mad Ants, so that when they have those call-ups, and they've been consistent pieces now, they're not getting sent down anymore, but when you had those call-ups, you were ready and well prepared to do so.
By the way, one area where Eddie is exactly correct, there is zero chance that Andy Sweeney's cologne would ever give you a headache, right?
That's probably accurate.
I'm just saying. Now, Dykton eats cereal in the morning, so you can do that instead of the sandwich.
Okay.
Do you like cereal?
I do like cereal.
Do you eat cereal out of a bowl or a moose cup?
Bowl.
Jimmy?
Bowl.
You've never eaten it out of like a big plastic cup? It's the best way to do it.
No.
It's
a college thing. Yeah.
It's a college thing, but then it's just
like
easier.
like the souvenir soda size type of cup. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes.
Like the big cup like that.
Yeah.
It's just easier, right, than
Yeah.
a bowl, especially if you're like at home. I get it, but like you're coming into work, the bowl itself. Plus, I don't want to look at people's leftover milk in the bowl.
When I was
disgusting.
a kid,
it's like mayonnaise. It's disgusting.
When I was a kid, we had these bowls that it had a straw attached to the bowl. Because a lot of people like to drink the milk afterwards. Some people leave it. I was a milk drinker. I like to finish it off. But instead of pour back with the spillage, you just take the straw. And
I mean, that's solid. But
then people don't have to look at the milk like you were saying.
But the post-cereal eating milk of someone else is absolutely
gross.
horrific.
Yeah.
That and
Especially in a college setting. That thing's not getting cleaned. It's going to just sit there for a couple days.
Dairy products in general, and I love milk. My first word was cow, okay? I'm pro-milk. I IMC.
Your first word wasn't me?
Do you have anybody that can attest? Can anybody attest to that? I would love that in writing. Yeah, Jake's
What's
first
it?
word, cow, definitively.
We'll have my mom call in.
All right.
Mom, if you're listening, call in at 239-1070 and vouch for this. My first word was cow.
That's awesome.
I said Kai, though, but yes, it was cow.
All right.
And then, just so you know, I didn't learn the word me until I learned the word love, because they went naturally together, right? But I'm pro-milk. I'm pro-dairy product. However, the combination and the viscosity of saliva and dairy product grosses me out to no end.
I don't blame you.
Very early in our relationship, at one point, like Shannon and I went and we were having ice cream, and she like took a scoop of her ice cream and she's like, "Here, do you want to taste it?" And I'm like, and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, do you have another spoon?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, because I had a cone, she had and I'm like, "Do you have another spoon?" She's like, "Why?" And I'm like, I can't lick off your spoon." And she's like, "What are you talking about?"
Okay, that's where I separate from you. I don't have a problem with that. Like, that's
horrific. Same with mayonnaise is the most disgusting thing on the planet. We've had this discussion. Like,
you've kissed Shannon before. What's the difference with a little bit of
it didn't have
ice cream?
there was
involved?
no milk or dairy product involved. Exactly that. Exactly what he just did. Exactly that. I'm just telling you. Zero chance that I am sharing any sort of a food utensil if it's touched someone else's dairy product and their saliva mixture.
Well, they're going Monday plans now, man.
I'm just telling you guys. I'm telling you, when they have out here on the circle and they have the strawberry festival and they got the whipped cream and that kind of stuff, I need my own. Not that we would be sharing one, but my own spoon. Don't even think about it. Yeah, exactly that. That is exactly correct. Yeah. It gives me the heebies all day long. We'll update you on Purdue.
Save that for Halloween.
At Bet365, we don't do
Well, we do not know at this point the severity of it, but it is our obligation, even though it's on up against us, to inform of what has just taken place in Minneapolis, which, of course, I don't have to remind Purdue fans of the horrors that Minneapolis, Minnesota bring up from a memory standpoint for Purdue basketball and injuries, etc. But about midway through, midway through the second half of Purdue's current game with Michigan State in the Big Ten tournament, Braden Smith, their point guard, drove to the lane and landed kind of awkwardly, really with no one around, on his right leg, which appeared to hyperextend his leg or move it or contort it into a less than natural position. And Braden Smith was down on the floor for a substantial amount of time. The good news would be that Braden Smith did leave the floor and go back into the locker room under his own power. He did go out unassisted off of the floor. But for a team that is absolutely has so much in front of him and so much promise for the Purdue basketball fan base, he is the engine, or one of the, at very least, key pistons in the engine of Purdue basketball. It is presumptuous to say what it might be. It is also merely speculative to say, or not even responsible probably, to speculate as to how long that he may be gone. Because of the fact, to me, Jimmy, the encouraging thing was the fact that Braden Smith walked under his own power off the floor. If that was something, again, I want to be careful because I don't want to be irresponsible, but that's the kind of thing that if he was truly injured, I would think that they would have assisted him off the floor, but we shall see, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I refuse to go down the path of what it could or could not have been. I will say Braden Smith's a tough guy, like a very tough dude, so the thought that he would be able to get himself off the court is a positive, but it also doesn't surprise me. Like, I feel like he is the type of player that, no, I'm getting off of my own power. But that said, they showed him in the back of the hallway in the lead up to the locker room. Body language, he looks frustrated like anybody would be, but he's able to get up off his own power, and you obviously hope it's nothing serious. And you hope that he's able to come back at some point for Purdue in what is, the heartbeat of this team.
Now, things are getting a little bit chippy in general.
Yes.
And I think you could see a frustration with both Purdue and Michigan State's in a game that they probably feel like they're pretty. Michigan State probably feels pretty good about where they are in terms of getting into the NCAA tournament, but they also may, and I'm sure their coaching staff has been letting them know that they've got some work to do, perhaps to solidify that, right? And just to you know.
I mean, they're a 9 seed right now in Lenardi's. And the last time I looked, maybe a 10 seed. But yeah, if you're able to solidify and get a win over a consensus number 1 seed, yeah, you got to fight for it and work to further solidify your thing. I will say, and Jake, you brought it up during the break, reminded me that I said it just for the sake of conversation, because I've seen it twice now on Twitter from people that either cover college basketball or that are involved in the sport, and I want to revisit the talk. To be clear, I need to clarify this up front. I do not blame anybody on Purdue for this happening to Braden Smith, whatever it is. It's a freak play. Could have happened in January, could have happened next week in the NCAA tournament. But Purdue, like many conference champions in their spot, really has nothing to play for this week. And we throw out a hypothetical that, again, probably never would have happened. But I think this is always in the back of coaches' minds of how much the games matter for where we're going. And I'm sure there's financial incentives there as well. But Purdue had their seed locked up, and they knew where they were going to be next week. The only concern would be, are you a consensus number 1 or not? You won the Big Ten regular season title. You don't need an automatic qualifying bid. Do coaches moving forward in that same position where everything's pretty much locked up, look at conference championships and say, man, how much minutes, how, if any, starters should be involved? That was just a hypothetical we threw out last week because I had a buddy of mine, diehard Purdue fan. I got dinner with him a couple nights ago, and he was basically saying, like, man, like I asked him, where's your focus now? He's like, it's on the NCAA tournament because the Big Ten tournament does not matter for Purdue. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't matter to them, but it doesn't matter for what this season has been about. So just food for thought. Like I said, I'm not saying that is why Braden Smith got hurt because it's a freak accident, right? You don't know when that's going to happen. But conference championships, unless you're a team that's fighting for an automatic qualifier like Indiana is, I mean, largely for Purdue, it's a meaningless game in Minneapolis where you just happen to be representing the conference.
You know, here's the one thing that comes into play with that. And I'm going to go because it's, again, I mean, you know, in racing, we say that cautions breed cautions. I guess in sports sometimes, like, ominous news reawakens ominous news. But we don't know the severity of the Braden Smith injury, okay? We know that Braden Smith just left the game with Michigan State, hobbling and appearing to favor and hold his right knee. But he did walk off under his own power for what that's worth. I do know that you can walk under your own power after a significant knee injury, but in athletics, one would assume that he would be assisted off the floor.
As someone who's experienced a significant knee injury, can confirm that you can't walk off underneath your own power.
Did you do it in a team setting?
Yes.
Did the team offer the assistance of helping you off?
No.
Okay. Because I would think in that situation, in a Big Ten tournament, as the guy that is the motor of a number 1 overall seed, who knows, right? Maybe I'm just trying to offer some optimism for Purdue fans.
Sure.
But
he is walking back out there, by the way, for what it's worth. So that's a great sign.
The thought of...
They show him running in the tunnel. There you go.
The thought of should they rest players, etc. Now, Braden Smith is on the bench, and he is holding his right knee. And Matt Painter is talking to him. The thought of, is it in the best interest to... He actually is kind of holding the calf just below the knee, Braden Smith. And he looks to be... He's explaining, it appears to Elliot Bloom, what went on, and he looks to kind of be explaining what happened and is now pulling up the sock on his opposite leg. But the thought of resting players, it goes back to the Colts. The Colts went with that mentality and that strategy quite frequently, and I think it blew up on them. That's the other side of it, Jimmy.
I mean, it's a rest versus rust thing. That's what it comes down to.
Right. I mean, and also, if your team's rolling, you want to keep rolling.
Sure.
Right?
I get that. I do. And I'm not saying that whatever the diagnosis is on Braden Smith, and again, he's on the bench now, so hopefully, again, he's okay. I'm not saying this should be a movement where teams are suddenly striking Big Ten tournament games, and it's clear, or it's very rare that a team would be in Purdue's boat where they're so locked in that it doesn't matter. Usually it does matter for seeding, for extra bump, whatever it may be. It's just, it is interesting to me how teams, if it was a serious injury, which again, you hope it's not, if there'd been a reaction from other teams of, man, if we don't have anything to play for, what are we doing with our starters out here? Because your goal is not to win the Big Ten tournament if you're Purdue. Like, it'd be a nice checklist along the way.
I don't know about that.
No, it'd be a nice checklist along the way. It's not their goal this year. Their goal is to win the NCAA tournament.
I think their goal is to win anything that is before them.
Hardware is on a checklist, right? But if you made them choose, which one are you choosing? Like, that's all I'm saying.
For sure. But I think
I'm not trying to say they don't care about the Big Ten tournament.
But I think there's enough time off, though, that it's important to get the games and the reps. I get what you're saying, and certainly, depending on what happens here, it would lead credence. I get it. Kevin Bowen, by the way, going to join us just about 15 minutes from now.
See Absolute Comfort at the Flower and Patio Show, booth 3.
Guess who's on the floor for the Purdue Boilermakers?
Zach Edey.
He is. Would you like to guess who's accompanying him?
Fletcher Lawyer.
He is there as well. Caleb First on the floor. Mason Gillis hit a big shot just a bit ago. And also on the floor for the Boilermakers, returning, Braden Smith is playing in the game. Now, I will say, and maybe it's power of suggestion, he did have a play where he looked like he was leaning down defensively and rubbing on and favoring his knee. But if you're just joining us, Braden Smith went down awkwardly. What's that?
Where have you been?
That's right. Thank you. Usually I do say that, don't I? I don't even realize that I'm saying it. Braden Smith went down awkwardly and walked under his own power to the Purdue locker room, came back, sat down on the bench, was rubbing on his knee and favoring it just a bit. He is back out on the floor for the Boilers, or at least was. So it looks like it may be, in fact, crisis avoided. I know several people have said to me, and Eddie, again, I don't mean this by any means to dismiss your validity either. I have not been through the situation of a knee injury, a significant knee injury. But somebody else just said, hey, Jake, when I was in high school, I blew out my ACL and walked a mile back to school to get a ride home. I get all that. I'm just saying, if you are an all-conference level point guard for the number one ranked team in college basketball that has a number one seed, and in your conference tournament you go down what appears to be a serious injury on your knee, assuming that it's a serious one or you relay information to your training staff that it felt serious, in that situation, my assumption is that you are not walking off because they're going to say, I know you want to walk off, but we're going to go ahead and help you to the locker room.
I know earlier that we made the disclaimer already that we are not doctors. Clearly we are not, but I'm going to go on record with this thought because it's the only way I can rationalize it in my brain. I know we talked about the hypothetical of starters playing, starters not playing. If you're worried about Braden Smith right now as a Purdue fan, I would breathe a little easier because there's no way he's still out there unless Purdue's medical staff gave him the clear thumbs up, hey, you're all good to go. Because if there was not a clear thumbs up, now it doesn't make any sense for him to be out there. Because the optics of him not being good enough to be out there and then getting hurt, again,
fair,
are awful. So I'm going to say he's, like, as he joked about, Indy Katz interviewed him in the hallway and tweeted this, as he was running back out to the floor. If he asked Braden Smith how he was doing, he said, I've been better. So, clearly a little joke and tongue-in-cheek there. But, yeah, he's not out there unless Purdue is giving him a thumbs up to go be back out there.
Chris just sent a tweet, a loyal listener of the program, which we appreciate, but he just sent a tweet saying something about my ego. I think part of my, I've always said this, I think part of my humility is that I don't have an ego despite the level of greatness, right?
But I thought that the reason we had three chairs here, with one being empty, was one for Jake and one for your ego. I misunderstood that in the show notes.
I thought that was for Jeannie whenever Jeannie wanted to make an appearance.
That's for Robin. That's correct. Yeah. I don't have an ego. I'm telling you. I don't know where this comes from. You know what I mean?
Every woman needs to sit every now and then, Jimmy. Come on now.
He's got his magic carpet for that.
He's flying around, Eddie.
Yeah.
He doesn't sit with the peasants on
He's
office
got a
chairs.
lantern. Come on.
Well, it's very tiny space.
How big would a genie be? Are genies like, I think genies are like, they hang out in a bottle, but they're big, right? They're
How tall are you?
6'4".
I think that the average drawing of a genie, if I'm going back to my Aladdin days, Disney style, about your size but can float, right? There's no feet. It's like a kind of a tail, like a little, like almost like a ghost.
If you could have any superpower, would it be flying?
Yeah. It's be tough to say otherwise.
Invisible.
Yeah, but you could cause a lot of havoc that way. Either that,
you could beyond create
or
havoc.
no. You want super speed, right? Because then you can travel on water. You're good. You don't need flight. You can be the Flash.
You don't
cloning.
If cloning, does that give you a headache?
No, cloning.
If you were invisible, you can fly wherever you want. Nobody'd even know it. You don't need a plane ticket to go. Where would you want to go vacation?
Wait, no,
where
play
would you
that
want to
out
go
for me.
vacation right now? Where do you want to go vacation?
St. Lucia.
It's expensive, right?
Yeah.
Not if you're invisible.
Okay, play that out for me.
Okay.
The Invisible Man.
Mm-hmm.
Is he getting on a Southwest flight?
gets on whatever he wants.
Right, but what about the real guy in B12 that's like, hey, there's a physical body here. I know no one else can see it, but there's a guy in my seat. Is he being court-martialed off or air-marshaled off?
Well, yes.
You just lay down in the cockpit. What are you doing?
Here's the other thing that would be hilarious about being the Invisible Man. You're the Invisible Man. You can think about this. You can say to your, especially if you had the ability to make yourself invisible intermittently, you say to your friends, I'm going to make you a wager here. What's that? I'm going to wager for you that sometime today on an airline, there is going to be videos that are going to go viral of somebody losing their mind and being claimed as mentally insane because they are going to be adamant that someone is sitting next to them and nudging them. And so then, you're the Invisible Man. Now, the problem is going to be then you have a floating phone because you can't videotape it. Other people are going to.
How
right?
this likely gets played out, though, is they're like, yeah, Joe Smith, could you please come to the desk, please? Yes, hey, what's up? Yeah, Joe, listen, B12 is haunted. We don't let anybody sit there, so we're going to have to put you on standby for the next flight.
Right.
What would the captain say, Jake?
Folks, I want to let you know we've reached our accusing altitude of 32,000 feet. Looks pretty smooth. Don't pay any attention to what appears to be a ghost or an invisible guy in B12 that's wreaking havoc. But other than the people losing their mind back there and creating TikTok videos, should get you engaged a little bit early. We appreciate, we know you have a lot of options. Appreciate you flying with us today. That's what they'd say. It's the same guy every time. It literally is the same. I used to think that it was the same, like the woman that gave you the time and temperature. I'm like, they have the same lady in every city before I realized this was like a computerized module, right? Kevin Bowen next. Final hour of the week for us.
It's like I'm back at South Bend, Jake. I'm excited. I'm hyped.
You're getting seriously
I'm excited. That just let's go. Kicking off fall Saturday in September. Come on.
Well, it's St. Patrick's Day weekend too,
Yeah,
right?
It is. It works both ways.
We did play that, though, because Kevin Bowen's joining us on the program. You hear him, of course, on the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy from 7 until 10 a.m. each and every day. Kevin, I will let you chime in since you are a graduate of Cathedral High School, and you cannot go with the answer, which is the easy out of both. I had asked you this a couple weeks ago, but now that we are here, I'll ask you again. The traditional St. Patrick's Day beer that Shannon and I enjoy at Connors. It takes place tonight because it is Friday and the parade was today, or we wait until Sunday because that's St. Patrick's Day?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, I think the common answer from the Irish folk would say, why not do both? If you're going to go pick one tradition, probably Sunday.
Now,
okay, Sunday it is.
Now, we also had a follow-up to that. We had Brandon Gaudin on earlier. Should Jake take the picture if him and Shannon are taking a picture on Sunday or today if they were to go both, the both route?
Oh, well, if you're going both, then the authentic is Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's why you go Sunday, right? You just do Sunday.
Well, but I think
and knowing, I mean, yeah, I mean, it'd be like running the Indy 500 a little bit on a Friday or something. Yeah, I think you got to, I think there's an element of if you're going to go Sunday, it's got to be Sunday.
I think a listener also texted you, Jake, and said that if you were going ham, like throwing beer after beer after beer back, the play is Saturday. But if you're just going for the one beer, like you said, then Sunday. Sunday's the play.
One beer and gone. Occasionally, sometimes there's a guy dressed as a leprechaun. We take a picture with him. If not, we swing by Derek's house on the way home, get it. It's fine.
Well, that's good.
Hey, Kevin, in terms of Colts free agency, we knew that Chris Ballard's MO has been always, shop at home first, and then you see what's out on the clearance sales. Are the Colts done, do you think, in terms of seismic moves here? Or are we going to see some more stuff roll in here over the next week, and then obviously around the draft, could there be something that surprises us?
Yeah, I think they have to do something in the secondary of significant, nature. I could make an argument for two moves in the secondary falling in that boat. I think you want to get to the draft, in a little over a month, and you don't want to have to force needs. You don't want to have to have a super urgency at a particular position. I think wideout, no matter what, needs a pick somewhat early. So I think addressing free agency or the secondary with a veteran is important as well because it's a very youthful, cornerback and really safety room. Certainly safety without Julian Blackman, but even corner when you don't, Kenny Moore provides a veteran presence, but those outside corners are very, very young. And, Dallas Flowers is coming off a serious injury. And Juju Brents is a guy that every time you ask Chris Ballard about him, he mentions the need to stay healthy before anything else. So I would say secondary. And honestly, if you probably look at free agency so far, those are two of the quieter positions so far. There's been a little bit more activity at corner and at safety, but, whether it's L'Jarius Sneed or Justin Simmons, two of the classes of those positions, there's still a little bit to play out, I think, before those two groups really start to dry up.
The Fan Zone, Kevin Bowen is our guest here from 7 to 10 a.m. on the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy. KB, I've asked this question to a number of different Colts beat writers on this show. I'm going to reference one of your colleagues as well to get a follow-up from you. And it's not just like my Chiefs bias in mind. I think it could really benefit the Colts. L'Jarius Sneed has continued to be tied to a lot of different teams, but the Colts included. I look at the idea of a more Sneed Brent in your secondary, and I think, I'm not saying it guarantees it, but man, you feel a lot better going up against C.J. Stroud and Trevor Lawrence in division with that type of secondary. Your colleague on the Colts beat, Stephen Holder, acknowledged this earlier today on Twitter, that it's less about Kansas City's willingness to trade him and more the challenge of teams trying to agree to a new contract in kind of that 1-2 punch. You trade the assets, you agree to the contract with the player so you're not wasting the assets. Do you agree with that sentiment? And is it still viable that they could take a swing to go get L'Jarius Sneed, assuming compensation on the draft side is a second rounder or worse?
Yeah, I do, and I also think comparing it to DeForest Buckner is true in a sense. I mean, there's a lot of reasons I think to make that sort of comparison to the move the Colts did. Whether it was 4 or 5 years ago now. I would say the difference is corners fall off a lot quicker than interior defensive linemen. And L'Jarius Sneed, I think it'd be unfair to label him as old. He's 27, but if you're giving a guy a very significant contract plus a draft pick or two or whatever that looks like, I mean, you want that guy playing certainly throughout the contract. You probably would love him for a second contract. And that's where DeForest Buckner is trending if you want to continue with that example. Buckner will be a free agent next season, and I would think it would make sense to re-sign him. Nothing crazy from a long-term deal, but still, interior defensive linemen, they've proven, Grover Stewart now is right around that age as well, to offer some pretty good football into their 30s, whereas corner, it's a bit like running back, and you start to get nervous when that guy reaches that mark. So, man, I'm watching this Purdue game. Purdue needs to lose. I mean, I'm seeing Zach Edey hobble around. Gosh, I don't know if you guys have it on in the studio, but this is like Purdue just needs to put everybody in a hazmat suit and get back to West Lafayette at this point. It doesn't look like they're going to lose, by the way. But yeah, that would be my thoughts, I guess, on the Sneed front. Sorry for interjecting randomly.
Speaking of the Big Ten tournament. One team that is not there and one coach that will not return next year for the Big Ten tournament, presumably, unless somebody else hires him. Michigan, Kevin, no surprise here, right? Michigan parting ways with Juwan Howard. Your thoughts?
Michigan, Ohio State, Louisville. How would you rank those jobs, Jake?
That is an outstanding question. Boy.
I think in that order.
I would take Louisville 1.
In Michigan, Ohio State, you're going to play second fiddle, which,
that's it.
Good or bad
here's the other
from
thing.
From a football standpoint.
This is why I would rank Louisville first of those 3 jobs, because I think the resources and the fan base and the money is there to turn around quickly, but they are so far gone that the expectation is not going to be there for like a 1-year turnaround, whereas Michigan and Ohio State, whoever takes that job, it's going to be expected that, like, you're going to have it, you're going to be right. They have very recently been very, very good, right? And so there's going to be more pressure right away at those jobs. I think, personally, Ohio State is leaning towards Dusty May, and I think Ohio State is going to choose between their interim head coach and Dusty May. I think that's where that is going in Columbus. But Michigan throws a curveball into it. Louisville is very intriguing, and I had somebody in the coaching world 20 years ago, granted, tell me that coaches always perceived Louisville as the number 1 job in the country because of the fact that Louisville was one that basically was like, do whatever you have to do to win. Now, in today's NIL era, that's changed a bit. Kevin, you would rank them how?
Yeah, I'd probably put Louisville at 1 as well. It just seems like that's hard to screw up, and clearly they have. I'd probably argue a little bit more off the floor that is still continuing to impact the on the floor. But, Michigan, Ohio State, you certainly aren't at the top of the conference in, I think budget and fan. I mean, I would think Michigan State and IU and certainly Purdue, based off success, already has you playing a little bit, near the bottom of that first tier. Obviously, resources from a university standpoint are huge thanks to football, but Louisville's commitment, the Yum Center, et cetera, I would think Louisville would be, pretty darn. Yeah, I put Louisville 1, Ohio State, Michigan. You probably flip a coin. Probably Ohio State, then Michigan. I just think Michigan's in a pretty dark spot right now with how the season has gone.
Yeah, but to your point, though, Ohio State or Michigan, either one, I guess the yin and the yang, the positive of it would be that realistically speaking, you are second fiddle, and maybe that buys you a little more time under the radar if things don't go well. But Chris Holtmann and Juwan Howard would have other comments to say about that. And then, the challenge being, of course, you are never going to get the full resource that your football program gets. I mean, I think we know that, but
sure. And I mean, I don't act like they're. I mean, they obviously are great jobs, and Thad Matta and John Beeline and company clearly have proven that here as of late. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy to think of 3 pretty prominent Midwest jobs all open.
Kevin Bowen is our guest. You hear him in the mornings on the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy. Kevin, I want to get back to Colts free agency, by the way, and not necessarily looking forward with it, but looking back a little bit. In terms of the way they went about retaining who they did, was there any surprise to you? Or was there any surprise in terms of like the priority of the way that they seemingly did it and the money that they spent?
Not really. I mean, maybe the money for Grover Stewart was a little bit higher than I would have thought. If you take Kenny Moore at his word, I mean, he said earlier this week he thought 50-50 he'd be back. I mean, can you imagine that cornerback room without him? Because, when you talk about passing the torch on to a younger player, if you want to get really optimistic at safety, I guess you could try that with Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas. At slot corner, I don't think there's anybody on the roster that you would feel that way about. So that's probably what stands out. But, I mean, for the most part, it's probably gone how I thought. I do a exercise each year where I try to put the free agents in kind of a green, yellow, and red category. Green, should be back. Yellow, a little bit more on the fence, and red would be no. And so far, all the green guys are back besides Blackman. He's the one that they haven't re-signed. And again, safety's been relatively quiet from outside the Colts standpoint as well in free agency. So, it's gone according to plan, I think, for the most part. And then, again, like I said, Dominic Rosie, sorry.
Can we get Rosie on the phone? Can we get Rosie on the phone? Can you ask her if she likes her Clemson Bear?
Rosie's trying to build a fort right now. Rosie, do you like your Clemson Bear right now?
No.
You don't?
Wait, what's that? What?
No, I don't know if that's already been sent to Goodwill or not.
How about our Clemson little jumper?
Yeah, we actually like that, and I mean, I think we're nearing weather that we can go back there.
Can you ask her if she likes that?
Yeah, Rosie, do you know that purple and orange suit you have in your closet?
What?
You know what I'm talking about? The Clemson one?
Yes.
That Uncle Jake got you?
Yes.
Do you like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
Back.
One
There
for
we
two,
go.
not bad.
In the mix. We're back at it. All right, that's what I like to hear.
Kevin Bowen is our
sweet on the answers there. We don't need to expand much. We're just yes and no if you want to transcribe that.
Kevin Bowen is our guest. You hear him on the Wake Up Call. KB and Andy, 7 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. KB, I look at the Colts offseason wanting them to make a philosophical change that was never going to occur, especially with bringing in another weapon for Anthony Richardson. And some of the contracts, look, I don't think the Titans are right with Will Levis, but I admire what they tried to do, bringing in Calvin Ridley, another weapon for him, just to see what they have. But that contract, probably a little too rich. When I look at, for example, because he just signed last night, a first, yes or no for this, Hollywood Brown, does he more like Alec Pierce in terms of being someone to take the top off of defense, or more of a Josh Downs to get separation and, create good passing angles? Where do you view him if, he had been a Colt, for example? Who would he have replaced?
Pierce. I mean, I know obviously body type, it's much different, but I think he is certainly over the top type of guy. I think Downs is a really, really effective, just kind of slot possession. Brandon Stokely, Austin Collie, however you want to look at, former slots the Colts have had. And I think you guys and I have talked about this before. I think the missing ingredient for that wideout room is a yards after catch guy, and those guys come in all very different shapes and sizes, which is good. It's not like you have to pigeonhole yourself into a specific body type. But I think that is the missing ingredient. And Chris Bauer is certainly not held back, I think, in explaining he's a huge, huge wideout draft class fan here in 2024. So, I said it earlier to you guys, I'd be stunned if we got to Saturday of the draft. Again, round 1 on Thursday, round 2 and 3 on Friday. I'd be stunned if we got to Saturday and they will have, not spent one of those first 3 picks on a wideout. Hell, knowing Ballard, he'll probably trade back in round 1 and then spend an extra pick on a wideout. So I think that's the path. And, I'm just curious in future off seasons because it doesn't look like it's going to happen this off season. It doesn't look like they're going to make that big kind of splash. And by big, wideout splash, I think you look at, whether it was the Stephon Diggs trade to Buffalo on Josh Allen, early in Josh Allen's rookie contract. Tua saw it, now a couple years ago with Tyreek Hill. Jalen Hurts, of course, saw it with A.J. Brown. You have this ability when you're on the rookie contract. And in a way, I think that's kind of what Tennessee has done with paying, Calvin Ridley as much money as they have. You could look at Houston, doing that with some of the big moves they've made for Joe Mixon and Danielle Hunter and Danico Autry. That's the time to do it. And, again, we'll see how the rest of the offseason plays out. It's still somewhat early, but it looks like the Colts are going to be pretty status quo here in the year 1 of building with Anthony Richardson, and we'll see if year 2 or year 3 changes that at all.
Well, I'll use him because he just recently signed. I look at 1 year, $7 million for a guy like Hollywood Brown, who I think would have benefited Anthony Richardson and what the Colts want to do. And I look at that as a low-cost signing on just a 1 year kind of prove-it deal. Maybe he just went there because Kansas City's Kansas City, but that type of profit margin isn't as crazy. They didn't do that. From my standpoint, that now indicates I agree with you. Not only will they have taken a wide receiver or 2 by Saturday of the draft, I think that first round pick selection should be a wide receiver. Do you view it that same way, given the need to supply Anthony Richardson with weapons and the fact they have not done it the traditional free agent way?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jimmy. I would say this. I in no way, shape, or form will be upset if the Colts, spend the 15th overall pick on wideout. Nothing like your daughter telling you to be quiet so she can watch her shows. I exit.
What show is she watching?
PBS staple, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. Honestly,
nice.
Jake, you and Boo would really enjoy it. It's a great flick. He's currently heading to the hospital. Looks like Mr. Tiger. So I hope everything's
okay.
all right with him. Tyrese Halliburton actually dressed up as Grandpere, Daniel Tiger's grandpa, in one of his outfits earlier this year.
Is Daniel going to the hospital as a patient, or is he going to check on a friend?
That's a great question. I think he's going. Of course, sat on the changers, so now the channel's been changed. This is just a disaster right here. I want edge rusher, honestly, at pick 15. That's where I kind of view it. And I would say Chris Ballard would disagree with me on that. I just think that is a position that's really hard to find. And wide receiver with this draft depth in today's college football, there's just more of it. And I think you can look at some of the elite wideouts in the league, and Deebo Samuel and DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin and A.J. Brown. I mean, those guys were all taken outside of round 1, whereas edge rusher, I just feel like if you've got the opportunity to draft one that you view as being truly elite, that you have to do it.
But is going back to pass rusher a waving of the flag in the fact that an area where Chris Ballard has proclaimed in the past to be very dedicated towards building and asking for patience on, and getting Kwity Paye and getting Dio and getting guys that were supposed to be that, if they do that again, is that him admitting that he was wrong?
Yes, but that's part of him doing his job. I mean, the longer you hold on to the Bjorn Verners and Trent Richardsons of the world, the quicker you're going to be ushered out. And so you've got to admit mistakes. You've got to know when to cut ties. You've got to know when to, continue to swing even though you might have missed. And, Kamoko Toure and Ben Banigou were clear misses. It's not like they've latched on elsewhere. You can look at a guy like Jerry Hughes and be like, well, he just needed to change the scenery. Bjorn Werner and certainly Toure and Banigou you would consider bust. So I look at Kwity Paye and think, he's a nice player, certainly helps you out, I think, on early downs. But as that real kind of speed dominant rusher, I just think that's a missing ingredient. So I kind of enter the draft and look at it this way. We'll see how free agency plays out. But support for Richardson, I'm never going to, act like that is something that you don't need. If you don't support your young quarterback, I don't think you're doing your job in trying to grow and develop and help that guy succeed as best as possible. I think you're seeing the AFC South teams do that largely. So that is fine and well, but I don't want to lose sight of edge rusher. I mean, last year of the 17 quarterbacks you played, 10 of them were rookies and backups. I mean, you had a beautifully favorable quarterback schedule. You can't bank on that yearly. Certainly just on paper, the quarterbacks are much, much better this season than you faced last year. How do you disrupt that timing? How do you impact the game? How did you finish off the Tampa game? It was Samson Ebukam making a huge one-on-one play. If he doesn't make that play and stripping Baker Mayfield, who knows? Tampa could go down to win that game. Those are the types of fourth quarter plays that I think have been missing. So that's why I still put edge rusher right there with wideout early, and I'd probably put corner just behind those two.
Kevin Bowen is our guest. You hear him weekdays 7, 10 a.m. on the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter as well at KBowen1070, covering the Colts year-round. Kevin, for the Colts and the rookie contract of Anthony Richardson, from an offensive standpoint, and I guess the Michael Pittman Jr. contract trumps this to some extent, but from an offensive standpoint, do you feel they have wasted the luxury that they have of a rookie contract for who they think is their franchise quarterback in spending to maximize this window solely on offense? Because you mentioned, what do they do in year 2, in year 3? And part of a GM's job is admitting when you make mistakes and surviving by adapting. Ballard's yet to show that he's willing to do that in a free agent setting on offense. Do you feel like they're wasting the contract gold of the rookie deal offensively?
I wouldn't say wasting, because to me wasting means it's over. But I would say you have probably missed an opportunity here in year 1 to try and do that. I think back to the early Mahomes years, and you and I have had this conversation before, but, like taking a chance on Sammy Watkins. I mean, how big was Sammy Watkins for that first Super Bowl? He was huge.
Massive.
And, certainly he wasn't a core player that you point to 5-6 years down the road, but really critically helped, that guy out. What the Colts would say is this, and I think what Ballard would say is this, a guy like Alec Pierce, they feel like, his skill set matches Anthony Richardson's skill set. So they want to see him, with a full season with Richardson. And I can understand that. And again, I still think they're going to draft a wideout high here in a little over a month. But I just feel like in these next 3 off seasons, that's when the A.J. Brown trade happened in Philly. That's when the Stephon Diggs move happened in Buffalo. That's when, the Tyreek Hill trade happened in Miami. So you have this window. And, again, it's slowly closing. It's still plenty open. But you've got the window for the next couple of off seasons to make that move. I think if you look at the cap hit of Richardson, it's in the 20s among NFL quarterbacks here for the next few years. That's golden in terms of trying to build and do things differently and front load contracts and all of that. So I think that's the path that you have to take. And for what it's worth, Ballard has acknowledged, having the rookie contract quarterback is something different. Now, 4 days into free agency, nothing has really been different. So we'll see the draft, maybe something crazy will pop up, but I'm not necessarily holding my breath for that. But again, wasting to me would be like slam the door shut. There's no chance they can ever do anything. So I wouldn't use that word, but I think it's fair to say right now, as we chat here on March 15th, that, this opportunity here in year 1 is probably fair.
How many times a week, Kevin, when you are out and about, whether you're at Sullivan Hardware, whether you're at the park with the kids, wherever it might be, how often does somebody come up to you with the idea, suggestion, or inside information that the Colts are going to move up and take Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Can't tell you how many pairs of socks I've bought at Sullivan Hardware as I'm getting ready to check out, and I just look over and see socks that catch my eye.
Didn't you have like Cheetos socks at one point?
Cheetos and Cheez-It. Yeah.
Cheez-Its, that's right.
Yeah, both. We don't discriminate against the cheese cracker family by any means. Not as much as questions about, Irsay's health or Richardson's health or that. I mean, it comes up, Big Ten country, Marvin, obviously, his pedigree, but yeah, not as much as some of the other. And again, I know that Irsay said something that might chap along those lines. I just think it's beyond twofold. One, you would have to have a willing trade partner, and two, you would have to give up the absolute mortgage to do a trade like that. And honestly, I know you guys talk to NFL draft people at the Combine. I think there's more people around the NFL that view this wide receiver class a little bit closer at the top than, Marvin Harrison and, just a bunch of rumps. I mean, I think there is some legit talent that they would throw in there on that top tier as well. And again, Ballard's comments at the Combine were pretty clear how much he thinks there is in this draft class. So, yeah, I mean, it would take multiple first-round picks to move from 15 to 4 or whatever it would take. And I can't see, especially, Arizona's got pick 4, right?
Yes.
And they just lost Hollywood Brown. I think we all saw the Kyler Murray tweet.
And the writing on the wall with Marvin Harrison Jr. there, Kevin, was there before that trade in terms of where people were mocking things. So. Sure.
Yeah. And then, look at the Chargers at 5 right now. Who in the world is Justin Herbert throwing the ball to? So, yeah, I don't see it happening. I mean, wasn't it this time last year? I guess maybe 13 months ago that Jim Irsay dropped Bryce Young's name in the old press conference, and obviously that never came to fruition either.
Kevin, I'm not a golfer, so I don't know the answer to this. You would know. Anthony Richardson, I know the other day was at Topgolf and was swinging the club around. I have no idea. Is there anything to read into that in terms of his, the health of his shoulder, et cetera, et cetera? I know he's throwing the ball, so we know that he's progressing nicely. But, is that just one of those things where like, oh, yeah, cool? Or is it like, oh, wow, that's a good sign?
Yeah, well, it's probably not good for the is golf a sport camp out there. We'd like for the injury to take him off the golf course for months and prove that golf is the most grueling physical contact sport you could have out there. But, yeah, I would say it's a good sign, right? I don't know. Labrum, right? What is it, right labrum? I'm trying to picture like a right-handed golfer, how they swing. I don't know. Yeah, I'd say it's better than not doing anything out there.
I would think that, like, during
as long
it,
as
he would have
not jumping off the top ledge at Topgolf, I would say it's a good thing.
Okay, fair enough. Kevin,
Did
appreciate
he
the
try to
time.
hit it on I-69?
Somebody sent me somebody was like, look, Anthony Richardson's at Topgolf, and I'm not one to throw stones by any stretch, but it didn't look like necessarily the swing was great. So, he looked like he might have been
Well, leave it to Jake Query,
right.
the Butch Harmon of golf pros out there.
That's right.
Now, hear me out on this. You're at Topgolf. You somehow hit a ball on I-69 and shatter a window. What happens?
Will your insurance cover that?
Does that get back to you? Do they have chips in the balls? Do they know where you're at?
Wow, that's good.
Bay?
Yeah, I would think.
Do you get out of there on time? How quickly can you go across the street to those, whatever, Shake Shack or IKEA and Hyde?
I would think
they find
that
you?
the chip would allow them, the person turns around once they get over their shock. They go back to Topgolf and they're like, hey, this thing just broke my window. Topgolf then would be able to determine who hit the shot. I would assume there's something that you sign that says you're responsible, but Topgolf probably says, it's a couple $100 window. We'll take care of it. Nice shot. And that's the end of it.
It'd be a hell of a shot.
Listen, it's better than that kid that hit a putt for the first time in 198 years at a Butler game and all he got was $5,000.
Hey, did you guys see it happen at the Purdue game today?
Yeah, and that kid got like $1,800. What the hell are we doing here? That should at least get you. I mean, from that far away on wood, mind you, that at least is worth a house and a week in Miami or something.
Or hell, he should get blue at his next birthday party.
Well, I don't know. I'd rather take the $5,000. All right, Kevin, appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend. All right.
All right, boys. Have a great weekend. Happy Selection Sunday.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And St. Patrick's Day. That's right. By the way, while we have been on the air today, a couple of things to recap for you. A lot going on. A couple of breaking news stories. We'll do all of it for you next.
At Bet365, we don't do.
Early in the morning.
Okay, so let's go chronologically in terms of events that have happened on this show. If you're just joining us, where have you been?
Can I ask you a question, though?
Yes,
Did
sir.
we just merge Talk Like a Pirate Day and St. Patrick's Day together there? Was that what Eddie
Kinda.
was doing?
Yeah. Eddie was making a good stereotype about how Irish people are all drunk. So they
Not
can call
me.
Eddie.
It's a song. Sorry.
Call Eddie.
Hey, you told me to play Irish songs, so I did.
So you played one about a drunk guy. That's cool. Yeah.
Big day today, though. It was a crazy day on the show.
It was.
Every day is, but today especially so.
You know, we began the show by talking, obviously, about the Big Ten tournament, Indiana in action tonight, and taking on Nebraska. But then kind of all hell broke loose in the Big Ten. Juwan Howard has been relieved of his coaching duties at the University of Michigan. I don't know that that is a huge surprise. There are reports that Dusty May is one of two finalists for the head coaching vacancy at Ohio State. He is also believed to be linked to the job at Louisville. Purdue, in their game against Michigan State in the Big Ten tournament, saw Braden Smith drive to the basket a little over, halfway through the second half of their game with Michigan State. And Braden Smith landed awkwardly on his left leg. It seemed to almost look hyperextended. He reached down to what looked to be his knee. He left the game under his own power, walking off the floor and then running in the back tunnel. He returned to the floor, sat on the bench, sat next to Elliott Bloom, and was talking to Matt Painter and was rubbing his knee and then more so the side of his calf. He did return to the game, did Braden Smith in Purdue's win over Michigan State. And afterwards, Eddie, you said that Matt Painter has given an update.
Yeah, Matt said after the game on the court for his post-game interview right after, he said it was a calf issue, not a knee issue with Braden.
So Braden Smith did finish the game, though. Zach Edey also got a little bit tangled up, also finished the game for Purdue. And then also about an hour ago, we found out that congratulations to Bedford North Lawrence basketball player Chloe Spreen, who has been named the 2024 Indiana Miss Basketball. She will play collegiately at the University of Alabama after a recruitment where when she originally committed to Alabama, I believe that she was not as highly ranked as she now is. I believe she is listed as a 5-star recruit. So the Miss Basketball has been named. I think that gets us caught up to everything, does it not? Oh, the other thing as well that we talked about that happened overnight, in keeping watch for Indiana State.
And we said Purdue beat Michigan State, right? We
Correct.
said that in the rundown. Yep, okay,
Correct. And in looking at Indiana State and what Indiana State needs to do to secure themselves a spot in the NCAA tournament, according to the latest bracketology, again, not gospel, but pretty good barometer, that has Indiana State as the the second team now out, behind New Mexico. And then the last four that are in are Texas A&M, Virginia, Colorado, and Seton Hall. We took a look at all of the teams that are playing that have a chance to do damage to those teams. And essentially the easiest way to say it is that if you are a fan of Indiana State, or if you want to see Indiana State get into the NCAA tournament, pay very close attention. In the remaining games to be played in conference tournaments tonight, you are rooting for Marquette. You're rooting for North Carolina. You're rooting for North Carolina State.
Wolfpack.
You're rooting for Colorado State. And you're rooting for Kentucky. Those are the teams that play teams that are hanging around trying to jostle in line in front of Indiana State, and they would like to see those teams come and offer a huge shove and say, out of the way, because we want the Sycamores in. JMV will join us in just a couple of minutes. He, of course, I know is keen on that news about Indiana State, and we'll hand it off to him as well next.
Hi, it's Bob from
The Jay Cook Plays of the Day.
This is me, all right? I'm not a athlete. This is my way. This is how I win.
Today's Plays of the Day, Friday of Conference Championship Week, will start first, 5:35 Eastern tip-off. Big East Tournament semifinal. The Gaudin will scoop the 9 for St. John's. They're 9-point underdogs against UConn. A little bit later, after that, 8:05 Big East Tournament semifinal. Number 2 will take Marquette on the money line over Providence. Heading towards the Big 12, give me Iowa State on the money line over Baylor in the Big 12 semifinal in Kansas City. SEC Tournament quarterfinal in Nashville will take Alabama outright on the money line against Florida. Mountain West Tournament semifinal in Las Vegas around midnight tonight will take Colorado State, scooping the 3. They're 3-point underdogs against New Mexico State. Last one for you, slightly out of order, also in Las Vegas, but this the Pac-12 tournament semifinal. We will scoop 2.5 for Washington State. Cougars are 2.5-point underdogs against Colorado. Eddie, do you have any plays?
I do. I've got 2 after going a clean sweep 4-0 yesterday. Got you with Baylor.
You did.
I will take Illinois, Ohio State over 150.5. I think that's a big game in terms of scoring between the Buckeyes and the Fighting Illini. And then in the Indiana-Nebraska game, taking Keisei Tominaga over 14.5 points.
Those are your plays of the day.
14.5?
Yeah.
What's he gotten in their previous matchups?
He got 20 in the most recent, and the first time he got 28.
And the over-under is at 14.5?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, that seems like I would be with you on that, right?
That's why I bet it.
There is one team that is I think thought to be a pretty high seed in the tournament that's in trouble right now, right? Not that they're not going to get in by any stretch, but
Tennessee, yeah, they are currently down 20 to Mississippi State. 8 minutes to go in the second half.
As we discussed amongst ourselves, Mississippi State already in the field, so not an impact in terms of the Indiana State rooting against a bunch of teams thought process that we had.
Okay, here's one for you. What's the team every year when the tournament selection comes out? There is somebody that gets like a 2 or 3 seed, and you're like, wait, what? Like for years it was Florida. Florida would be a 2 seed every year at 27-5, and you're like, really? I didn't hear anything about them all year.
To the casual fan, there's 2 nominees for that: Creighton
Correct.
in the Big East and Iowa State in the Big 12. That's going to surprise a lot of people.
Iowa State's a 2 seed.
Yeah, they've been phenomenal all year long.
I've not heard anything about Iowa State. By the way, coming up on Monday, we will have Valerie, who is the official number scrambler of this. It's a tradition we've done for years. We give away fabulous prizes, which we have yet to determine. The winner, the double-digit seed that advances the furthest, and the team that is blown out by the largest margin. Those are your 3 ways to win with our random number assignments for the NCAA tournament that we will do next week.
I can't wait for that.
James,
my inaugural version.
I'm still trying to give away to the winners of the fantasy football all their alcohol. They're still sitting back there in
I'll
our
take
office.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Free larceny
I'm
bourbon.
still waiting. Still waiting on people.
Larceny bourbon's good, man.
It is awesome, especially on a weekend like this weekend, little St. Patrick's Day. I'm bummed because normally we're out on St. Patrick's Day and one of the best days of the year. I mean, everybody gets crap hammered. It's beautiful, but it's on Sunday this year, so we're not doing it. You guys talking about the Sycamores on the outside looking in right now, and then Mississippi State. Hagan's team's just putting the absolute hammer to them right now.
Mississippi State's already in, though, right?
Were they?
That doesn't hurt them. Yeah,
Were
Mississippi
they?
State shows us it. Mississippi State in the last bracketology is
Were
a
they?
10 and rising.
So who do I need to lose today?
Texas A&M.
Yeah. See, what needs to happen, though, guys, they got to lose the first one. You can't wait until, I think, till you get to the second one. I think the second one is tougher to wish for a team to lose because much like you see in the NFL, those wild card teams play better in that second game because they've already been out there and already played in those situations, and the divisional team that's waiting on it sometimes doesn't. So I think that's an advantage to many.
Man, your trees, John, they dropped
They're
2
hosed.
spots, though, right? You
It's
think so?
NIT.
Think so?
NIT. I thought so when they didn't win it last week. I've just been trying to brown nose the committee chair, Chuck, and
Today is
all
telling.
those incredibly smart people over at the JW Marriott.
Don't you normally call them dorks?
Yes. No. Very smart.
They're his friends right now.
active, basketball-savvy people.
Today is basically the last line of defense. If Virginia, Texas A&M, and New Mexico all take care of business, it's probably
Did you
curtains.
see Boston College about made me want to puke. I couldn't believe I was up watching that game. I couldn't believe
Did you
I was
stay
up
up for all
watching
Colorado, Utah?
Oh yeah, it was awful. Just
I
awful.
went to bed
It's
at half.
awful basketball. Watching Boston College of Virginia, I would rather watch me playing a pickup game. It was so awful.
Right. There's a lot of I mean,
well, clearly you didn't watch the first round of the MCC.
funny thing about this time of year, is you will find yourself watching, especially once the tournament comes out, and you're sitting there and you're watching Iowa State and Baylor playing in a game, and you're totally glued to it. And you're like, "There's no way I'd stop and watch this on a Sunday in February, right?"
Yeah,
watch Shawshank instead.
It's March, baby.
And then watching Creighton too. Every time Creighton gets hyped, man, Creighton always lives down to the expectation, don't they? Almost always.
There is some truth to that. Yep.
Jake, some minor breaking news here. Kenny Pickett and his widow hands just got traded to the Eagles.
You know what's interesting about Kenny Pickett getting traded? He tried to wave goodbye to the fans, and no one noticed.
How's he going to hold those Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, those little hands?
That's right. He can't. Right.
Hey, how you doing? He's a T-Rex.
That's
Kenny
right.
T-Rex.
They, of course, have Russell Wilson now. John's up next. We'll talk to you Monday.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Hey, it's JMV, and for 6 months, you've been hearing me talk about the 2-year membership at the Legends Golf Club. This offer will be ending soon.